Hey everyone, Mr. Owlman8 with a Power Rangers challenge. I am going to tackle and debunk and untangle the web of confusion that is the finale to Power Rangers Dino Supercharge. Disclaimer, while speculations and theories is likely to be involved, there will be evidence based within the show. Furthermore, the purpose of this video is to let people know and basically clear things out about the ending, since it wasn't given much context. Yes, Dino Supercharge had other problems, though I'm pretty sure the ending would have helped, not to mention a good lead up plus context. Another thing I need to point out, to avoid confusion, as I'll be talking about two different timelines, the original timeline will be referred to as the Dino Museum timeline, and the altered timeline will be referred to as the Dino Zoo timeline, as well as adding some visual charts. Also, since this is an alternate reality like RPM, I will not be mentioning on how it would affect the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Dino Thunder, since they are not in that reality. Okay, let's begin. Question number 1. How do the past Energems bond with the Rangers, even though they've never met before? Now this is a question that gets mentioned by fans. Some of you may already know the answer, but it's a loose end that needs to get tied in anyway. The fact that a time portal is a result of unlocking the Energem's power would give you an idea on its connection to time. As Keeper said, when 10 Energems are joined, they break the chains that divide the past, present, and future. Meaning the boundaries we know of time will be flexible. Like the morphing grid, the Energems transcend through space and time. So the Energems would still recognize the person even though it never happened in a particular timeline. We are not talking about some MacGuffin trinket here, people. We are talking about the ultimate power. The powers of these things do not follow a straight linear line of time. Another thing to mention is that much like Thor's hammer, the Energems would recognize the Rangers' worthiness, regardless. It's not a question of what they do, it's who they are inside. At that point of the show, that is the case. Question number 2. What about the Dark Energem of the past? Shouldn't that cancel out the unlocked power? Yes and no. You see, both dark and colors would have similar powers and power levels, but they wouldn't be like that at the same time. Both would fluctuate. Also, as soon as the 10 unlocked Energems are awakened at the Dino Zoo timeline, the power levels are no longer equal. And given that the Dark Energem from the original timeline was destroyed, there's really not much that the Dark Energem from the Dino Zoo timeline can do against the unlocked power, which gained a lot of experience from the Dino Museum timeline. Question number 3. Shouldn't Heckle be dead on Sledge's ship? Not necessarily. And this is where it gets real tricky. All loop-de-loop, if you will. One version would be if Sledge captured Heckle after the ship was bombed by Keeper in either timeline, that would make a lot of sense and shouldn't affect him. The other version, there can only be one of the same person at a time, since we never see two Heckles or Xenowings. You know what I mean. Also, we never see two Keepers in the time traveling scenario. And there was a clear opportunity that this could have happened, which could strengthen this theory. If that's the case, then the current Heckle, who is making the Dino timeline, is the only one, and the captured Heckle has vanished. Kind of like a reverse Back to the Future, where the past self vanishes for the future self. Or this could be a Schrodinger's cat situation where it can go either way. Another take on this, the reason why Heckle isn't in the cell is because he had been erased by the eventually current Dino Heckle and Xenowing stopping Arcanon. Meaning things are changing before they happen, like a time paradox. And yes, that is way convoluted, though as I said before, it's all loop-de-loop. but it makes sense as why Heckle isn't destroyed if he was in the cell. Again, if this happened, then this negates the fact that he is in Sledge's ship to begin with. In addition, if that's the case, then the Dark Energem was already destroyed in the Dino Zoo timeline, unless you follow the comics indicating otherwise. Question number 4. Why was Fury and Curio gone from Sledge's crew if the others survived from the black hole? Okay, this is a real challenge, so hang on and bear with me. So in the black wormhole, there is this thing called a singularity, which is basically the thing that is situated in the middle of the tunnel. When Sledge's ship made it past the singularity and into another universe, their connection to their past selves had been severed. Because apparently the effects of time travel can't go beyond its own universe. This is some heavy parallel universe sci-fi stuff right here. So how did Fury and Curio not make it? Well, if I had to speculate, or guess, or otherwise, it's because they were eliminated much sooner than the others. In Curio's case, he was never made in the Dino Zoo timeline because the bad guys were gone. In the case of Fury, he died much sooner in the Dino Zoo timeline. In those two cases, these things must have occurred before the Dino Museum's version of Sledge's ship entered the singularity, aka the middle of the tunnel. This means that Dino Zoo Curio and Fury have been affecting the Dino Museum versions, hence why they didn't make it. There may have been other factors to consider, but this is the gist of it. Question number 5. If the past had changed, then shouldn't the events of Dino Charge be erased? So I've been trying to figure this one out, and as far as I'm concerned, this reality has its own rules, especially when influenced by the Energems. Just because they changed things doesn't mean they don't have memories about it. Here is what we know. Based on what we have seen, they seem to have memories of the Dino Museum timeline. Also, we don't get to see 2 Tylers or 2 Shelbys or anything like that, so only one person at a time. And since we never see anything like a newspaper headline changing or anything like that, it's possible that the Dino Zoo timeline is kind of like another place, as opposed to an utter rewrite of the Dino Museum timeline. In other words, moving to another reality, as opposed to changing set reality. With that in mind, this also removes the time paradox conundrums. I may also remind you that the power of the Energems would still be at play. Anyway, that is what could be the reason of the events happening the way they are. As to what happened to the Earth in the Dino Museum timeline, same with Fury and Curio. It vanished, but unlike Fury and Curio, it was restored and became the Dino Zoo version of Earth. Well, that's the idea anyway. Now, many people will say that Keeper messed up the timeline. And I say to those people, bullcrap, hogwash, horse feathers, and so on and so forth. If anything, Keeper did the opposite. Consider this. If you had seen Dimensions in Danger before watching the Dino Charge seasons, and Coda explain on what realm he is from, the context makes so much sense. And when you consider what the writers intended to do for Dino Charge, and if the same storyline was written better, one may come to the conclusion that the Dino Charge Rangers, in their entirety, was always set in its own universe. Not a divergent of the main Power Rangers universe, not some convoluted fanfics made from headcanons, or any crap like that. Just its own universe. And even if the Dino Charge universe was meant to be the main Power Rangers universe, plus the dinosaurs' extinction, which it wasn't, how would Keeper have known? Dino Charge was always going to be a universe with dinosaurs, but its destiny got disturbed by greed and desperation. The story of Keeper has a lot more meaning than it should have shown. At the end of the day, this was about an alien that brought conflict to a planet and indirectly caused devastation as a result. Said alien feels guilty and looks for the inner gems in order to set things right. That was always the plan with Keeper, as well as his motivation. Well, with all that said, I hope you found this enlightening, or at least entertaining. And that's pretty much my take on debunking the finale to Power Rangers Dino Supercharged.